House needs painting, grass needs mowing, where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Mossy Oak and Liqua Molly.
Welcome to Off the Water. I'm your co-host, Sarah Beth, and you are?
Hank Parker. Good to be here this morning, Sarah Beth.
Good to be here, and today...
I should say this afternoon. I slept late today. It's afternoon.
It is afternoon. Well, today we're going to be talking about Memorial Day. We just had Memorial Day this past weekend, and we want to remember those who didn't make it back home, those who made the ultimate sacrifice. And so we're going to be diving a little bit into that, remembering some people that we've lost. And I think you can get us started here.
Well, I think memory is important, and I think legacies and keeping memories alive is so important. I remember as a kid, my grandmother's brother, Marshall, was killed in the war. He was a fighter pilot. And all my aunts, and in our house and in my grandmother's house, there was a big framed picture of Uncle Marshall. And boy, you got in trouble if you ever knocked that picture over. And man, I got lots of spankings for knocking Uncle Marshall over. And so I asked my mom one day, I said, what's so important about that picture? Everybody's got that picture. And she said, that was your Uncle Marshall. He died in a battle in World War II, and we never want his memory to die. We will always want to remember him. And it's so important to our whole family that you know who he is. It's so important to know what a great person he was, and that he gave his life for this country. And so we never want his memory to die. So they always had that picture. And I remember as a kid, that answer that my mom gave me was very impactful. Right. I never even thought about it. I was just a kid, and all I knew is I got in trouble if we played around that picture. My brother and I knocked it over, we'd get in a lot of trouble. But that picture was precious to my mom and to the family because that was the memory that they wanted to keep alive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, speaking of memorial and devastating news, I know recently Phil Robertson passed away too, and I know he was a friend of yours. Yeah,
this past Sunday, Phil went home to be with the Lord, and it's ironic that I was reading his book, the latest book, and I guess the last book he'll ever write, unless he wrote some that we're not aware of that'll be published later, was I Could Be Wrong, But I Doubt It.
Right.
And I think that's his best work. I am really impressed by that book and his philosophy and his discernment on life itself. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. But Phil Robertson is kicking up gold dust today.
Yeah.
And he's where we all want to be. He's home. And we're all in this world just passing through. Life is short. The Bible says life is like a vapor. It's here today and gone tomorrow. And it just seems like yesterday Phil was up and at 'em and doing Duck Dynasty and making movies and writing books, and now he's in eternity. So life is short, and death is certain. And we will miss Phil, but his legacy is awesome, and we need to remember him. And I'm sure there'll be some documentaries and some movies and some things about who he was, and to keep his memory alive. And that's so important.
Right. Well, speaking of that, you gave me a list of people that you want to remember. So if somebody came up to you and said, hey, Hank, who should we do a documentary on in the bass fishing world?
Yeah,
so you gave me a list of people.
Let's back up and let's talk about the Dale Earnhardt documentary.
Oh, yes.
That's how this whole thing came about.
Right.
Dale Earnhardt documentary the third episode will air today. It's coming out today, and that's going to be cool. I've seen the first two, and I've read some of the comments, and 99% of the comments are favorable. But people are just, I don't know, there are a lot of people that are just not happy people, and they're always looking for negatives. And one of them said, I can't believe that Hank Parker, Dale Earnhardt's buddy, is going to try to make money off of his dead friend.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what
Audacity.
I said is, wow. Didn't get paid a penny, didn't want a penny. I gave 5 days of my time, and the reason I did it is because Dale Earnhardt was my friend, and Dale Earnhardt was so impactful on my life as he was so many other people's lives. He was a unique character. He could walk into the room and he'd take over the room, not by force, just the aura of Dale Earnhardt. And it just amazed me how quickly we tend to forget people in general. Mm-hmm. Now, Dale's the exception to that rule. Dale and Elvis are two that have survived and their memory's strong. Mm. But there are so many people that really don't know. They know about Dale Jr. and they know about the Earnhardt name, but they really didn't know who Dale Earnhardt is or who Dale Earnhardt was. And so when I was asked by the Ron Howard film crew if I would participate in sharing some stories for this documentary, I was absolutely delighted to do that because I knew, one, it would be a very quality documentary, and I don't want his memory to die. So we went to the premiere of the documentary in Charlotte, so many people there, and I was asked the question, why did you participate in this? What intrigued you, and why would you take time out of your busy schedule to contribute? And it's simple. It's to keep his memory alive, and that's so important to me.
Absolutely. I think you just completely hit the nail on the head. And you just got to ignore people that have this type of opinions because all they see are just the dollar signs, but they don't see the behind the scenes.
Well, they don't know.
Yeah, they don't know. Dale meant something to you. He was your close friend, you know?
Yeah, and people just look for any negative thing they can find, and it just bugs me. And most of the time, I read all the comments people make after we do a podcast or after I do a show or whenever, and it's so many negative comments, and the people are some people, and I say that 90% of the comments, 90% of all the people that make comments, it's all good. So
positive outweighs the negative for sure.
Yeah. But it seems like it's like they say about the one bad apple. If you put a spoiled apple in a bushel of good apples, that fungus or that bacteria on that spoiled apple will mess up the whole bushel.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's kind of where we are with social media. It seems like people, they just highlight the negatives, and I'm the same way. When I sit there and I read all these comments, love you, Dale. So glad to see the documentary. Well done. Oh, it's my favorite. Can't wait to see the next one. On and on and on. And then obviously come to one, well, he didn't deserve any credit at all. He wrecked so many drivers to get to the front. Or I can't believe that people are trying to make money. Shame on you, Dale Earnhardt Jr. On and on and on, you read these negatives, and then you read 25 positives, but you come to the next negative, and it plays out in your mind.
It carries more weight because it's like you don't understand it. People can be so hurtful for no reason. It's like if you're not behind the scenes, you don't know truly what's going on, just keep your comments to yourself. But hey, they say common sense isn't that common anymore, so.
Well, but one thing, Oswald Chambers, one of the quotes I read this morning in my daily devotions, everything that Jesus Christ said and did was contrary to common sense.
Right.
And it is. I mean, the way the Lord looks at things and the way the Bible is written, it's not at all in line with our human reasoning. So I can see how it's very easy to get on the negative bandwagon and make comments, and it is a little bit hurtful. And in saying that, that's what made me really want to make this show. Of course, you pointed it out perfectly in the beginning, is Memorial Weekend is about remembering those soldiers that paid the ultimate price for our freedom. And I don't want to do anything to dilute that. That's what Memorial Weekend is all about. That's why we celebrate Memorial Day in their memory. And I am so grateful to live in America. I'm so grateful for this country. I'm so grateful for those who paid that ultimate sacrifice. And we need to respect them and respect Memorial Day. So I don't want to take away from that in any way. That is what Memorial Day is all about. And we have cookouts and we have get-togethers, but in our hearts, we always need to remember the reason for this day is to remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom.
Amen to that, for sure. Well, let's go ahead and get into this list of
Well,
memorial.
I gave you a list, and the reason I did this is if I were asked by the Ron Howard group that did the Dale Earnhardt documentary, who in the fishing world would you recommend that we look into their lives to do a documentary? And so I put together a list, and the list is very, very, very long, and I'm sure we're not going to have time to get to all of them. But they're friends, they're people that impacted my life, and people I think are worthy to have their life story told. And it's amazing what happens in a span of time between those two dashes, between your birth date and your departure date, what happened in that dash. And it's really, these guys that I wrote down on this list were so impactful in my life. And I'd love to be able, personally, just to have a home movie of the beginning of the end of these lives. So all these guys have passed away, and they're no longer with us, but they are very impactful in many, many, many lives, in many, many ways. So I don't know, Sarah Beth, you got the list. You can call them out, and we'll talk about them.
Well, the first one on the list, and it's in big old bold letters, is Ray Scott.
Ray was bigger than life. Ray was the founder of Bass Angler Sportsman Society with a dream. I don't know that anybody could have pulled that off. At Ray's celebration of life, they played the song Dreams, and there was on the bulletin that we had, Ray Scott's a dreamer. And he was, in fact, a dreamer. And Forrest Wood, I'll talk about Forrest in a minute. Forrest used to say, it's no use to dream if you're not going to work. It's no use to work if you're not going to dream. What a wonderful quote from Forrest. But Ray lived that. Ray dreamed, and Ray worked to make those dreams come true, and we all benefited. And he wrote a book called The Bass Boss. And he sent me a limited edition copy of that and personalized it. And he wrote in the front of that book, "Thank you so much, Hank. We did it." And how gracious of Ray was that to include me. I was not nearly as impactful as so many others were. But I like the fact that he acknowledged how important it is that collectively we work hard to make our sport bigger than it is. And you can go back and say, what kind of sport would my sport be if all the participants were just like me?
Right.
And all that stuff we talk about negativity, it takes the sport down. It doesn't build it up. It doesn't make it prosper. It goes in the opposite direction. And so now I think we need to look at these guys. Ray, who was so protective, he was like a mother hen. This was his dream that he worked so hard to birth. And man, he took care of it. He didn't like controversy. He didn't like negative. He wanted to build it, and he wanted to incorporate corporate America and bring sponsor money in and build the sport and get it on the level with other sports. And so he had a dream that he brought forth. And to do a documentary on Ray, he came from the world of insurance. He was in Montgomery, Alabama. He was an insurance broker, salesman, and he had the dream of developing tournament bass fishing. And he made that dream come true. So what a great documentary that would be.
That really would, because bass really did start as a dream. Who would have ever thought that people fish for food, or they fish for fun, never really expecting it to be a sport. And I'm sure there was a lot of people like, bass fishing isn't a sport. Like, oh, come on now. Like, we do that every weekend to catch our fish fry or whatever else. So, I would 100% say you were a part of that dream, because it was not nearly as big as it is now back in your day. So it did start with an ambition, and it took a group of people to bring it together and to build it to where it was. And it took people not stopping, pushing through all the negativity, pushing through all of the other hardships that came along with it. And now we have this beautiful sport that we have today. So
well, and that is so true. And it was a lot of players that had dynamic personalities, a bunch of alpha males, and to be able to stay positive and contribute, I think is so important. And Ray did some things that a lot of people don't even realize to preserve the sport. You said it, Sarah Beth, when we started this thing, people went fishing for the purpose of catching fish to bring home to have a fish fry, feed the family. Nothing wrong with that, but there wasn't anything like sport fishing. It had just was in its infant stage. And Ray took it to a different level. And by bringing the notoriety and the popularity and incorporating so many more people into the sport, Ray realized we can't all keep a limit of bass out of public lakes and have a fish fry. We need to figure out how to keep these fish alive and keep them in good shape and release them back in the lake. And so catch and release became a standard because of Ray Scott. And then Ray, looking at what was happening with the growth of corporate America, textiles and lots and lots, and I don't want to pick on textiles because it was probably a lot more of the chemical companies than it ever was textile companies.
Yeah.
But there was so much polluting going on in our waterways. And there were a lot of Fortune 500 companies involved that nobody's going to mess with because their pockets are so deep, their legal teams are so strong. Who in the world would take on corporate America over polluting water?
Right, bleed you dry, 100%.
Yeah, nobody would do that except Ray Scott. And Ray Scott took on corporate America. He took on Fortune 500 companies and said, "Hey, you've got to stop polluting our water. We're gonna do a class action lawsuit. We're going to stop you from polluting our waters. We want our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to have healthy fisheries in our future. And you can't keep polluting these waters." Well, who is Ray Scott? Who is this little guy from Montgomery, Alabama, trying to control corporate America from putting chemicals in the rivers? Well, they found out who he was. He stood tall. And, man, he took it to Washington, D.C., took it to court, and, buddy, there was new legislation put in place to stop. And so today, when we sit here and we look at Lake Erie, it was a mess before Ray. It was a mess before legislation came about to stop polluting our waters. And so now you look at all the Great Lakes, what incredible fisheries we have. I think our waters are in better shape today than they've ever been. And a lot of that goes back to Ray Scott.
Yeah. I 100% agree, and that's crazy. That is something people wouldn't think about. People just think, oh, he's the father of bass, but not really seeing the behind the scenes of how much conservation that he was also a part of. So yeah, that's really awesome.
So today, if you don't like bass tournaments, and I understand people don't like bass tournaments, I hate myself. Sometimes I go to the lake, I thought, oh God, they're having a tournament today. There's 200 boats out here. I don't like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yet I'm a part of it. But nevertheless, you got to go back, and if it weren't for Ray Scott, if it weren't for bass tournaments, if it wasn't for putting all that together, we may not have clean water to go fishing in. So
right.
let's give credit where credit's due. Let's keep his memory alive, and let's respect the legacy that he built. So
right.
I would say let's do a documentary on Ray.
On Ray? All right. Well, you have multiple people on this list. But moving on to the next person that you'd say to do a documentary about is Forrest Wood.
Forrest was the most single impactful person for my career. Forrest Wood was a guy that was the most selfish person I've ever met. One of the most humble guys. And just like I said about Dale Earnhardt, Forrest could walk into a room and he would take control of that room, not at all wanting to do that. The humbleness, the transparency, everybody could tell Forrest Wood was real. Forrest Wood was transparent, and he was the real deal. He cared about people. There was no big me and little you with Forrest. Every single body was important to Forrest, and I knew from the very beginning, when I first took my Ranger plant tour in 1975, Forrest walked me through, and he was as proud as the custodian as he was the marketing director. He loved people, and it showed through in everything that he did. Forrest did as much as Ray to build the sport of bass fishing. They teamed up, and Ray couldn't have done it without Forrest, and Forrest couldn't have done it without Ray. So those two collectively pioneered and built the foundation of this sport. And Forrest was a guy that he would tell you he was a simple man, but he was a very complex individual. Forrest was a guide on the White River, trout guide. And he just loved fishing, the passion for the outdoors and the passion for the sport, and he wanted to grow it. And he made so many contributions. I know that Panama City Christian Schools needed some help. And Gordon Godfrey, a friend of mine, he reached out and he said, would you do a bass tournament? And I said, Gordon, I hate those things. I'm not a good MC. I like to fish in them, but I don't like to MC them and sit on the sideline and watch other people participate while I'm sitting. I want to be out there on the water. But this is something that's close to me. Yes, I will do that. So I contacted Forrest, and I said, Forrest, I've been asked to be a part of a tournament. We're going to do it at Lake Seminole, and we have got so many entries. It's going to be, it's called the Hank Parker event. And he said, Hank, I'm in. Just tell me what you need. And I said, Forrest, I'd like to be able to buy a boat and buy it at a price that would allow us to make a little money off of, because the whole point of this thing, this bass tournament, is to do a fundraiser for Panama City Christian School. And he said, I said, so would you sell me a boat at a good price that I can make money on? And he said, no, Hank, I won't do that. And really disappointed me. And he said, I'll give you a boat. He said, I won't charge you anything. I said, Forrest, that's not fair to you. He said, well, let me tell you, if you've got all these people and you're going to build this tournament, and I know how credible you are, an endorsement to me. Here's a pioneer, man. Here's the president of Ranger Boat. Here's a guy that is got so much notoriety. He's just encouraging me that I am somebody. You know, I was a little peon and nobody, but he was encouraging me so much with flattery that with your credibility, we're going to team up with you, and we know we'll get a good return on our investment. So we're going to invest in Hank Parker and Panama City Christian Schools. We're going to invest a boat and trailer for you guys to give away at your tournament. And the tournament was very successful because of Forrest. But that was his attitude. He gave in so many places that as a CEO and a CFO, looking at the spreadsheet, you would say, man, that was not a really good investment, the return on that. But he was wiser than the paper. He was wiser than the spreadsheet. He was wise enough to realize if you made contributions to help build the sport, you're going to get a return. And he told me that many, many, many times. He said, if you look at this just on face value, Hank, we're not getting a good enough return to justify doing this. But if you look at it long range, if we build the sport, then we'll get our fair share. If we do what's right, we build the boat, we build the best boat we can build, we stand behind that boat, we'll get our fair share, and it is a good investment. We need to build the sport. And I think that's something that we need to keep alive. I think that philosophy that Forrest Wood had is something we need to understand and keep alive today. With all the negativity, and everybody got a cell phone, and everybody's got a platform, their own little Apple box. Mm-hmm. Think about being positive instead of about being negative. Think about building the sport instead of tearing it down. Think about the whole picture rather than just one spreadsheet that reflects negative on you for this particular moment. Mm-hmm. Look at what long range can benefit everybody if the sport's healthy, strong. So I think those are the kinds of sacrifices, those are the kind of personalities, those are the kind of people. And when I say those are, there was only one Ray. There was only one Forrest. There's nobody like them. Mm-hmm. When we did the documentary, they said, what do you think about Dale Earnhardt? Why is he? There wasn't anybody like Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt was a unique individual. And so is Forrest, and so is Ray. So as I look, my whole motive on being a part of the Dale Earnhardt documentary was to keep his memory alive, because there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of lessons in life. And he was so impactful in my life, but so are these guys. Right. And I put a whole list of names down there. And I could talk about tons of people, but the people we're talking about and we have on a list, we want to keep their memories alive. Right. They've passed on, but the impact that they've had should continue, and we should not forget about them. Right. They're still due that respect. In my opinion, I think that they are, especially with how much they've contributed. And because of what they did, we are still reaping like the benefits from their actions nowadays. I still think we should be thankful, keep their memory alive, and remember where it all came from. And there's value in that. There's value. These guys had a lot of wisdom, and they contributed so much and built this whole sport. And it was built on sacrifice and credibility and honesty and integrity. And we want to highlight their lives and who they were and how they impacted the sport. So I think it's important that we learn from people. And when we have wonderful people that were so impactful, we need to remember them. Well, I think sometimes we need to remember where our roots came from, because I think a lot of people lose sight of where we came from or how to act, because I think that's very true, especially for this generation up and coming. Like we were saying before, there's a lot of negativity. Not really. There's positive, but I feel like sometimes people's attitudes tend to sway more towards the negative in general, instead of remembering those hard, true values of where the sport came from and who built it. It is so funny. And funny is not the right word. It's so predictable. you read the Bible, and during good times, people, the children of Israel, they would folly and they would go astray. In hard times, they came together and they called on the Lord. And we live in $100,000 boats. Everybody's got all this stuff, and it's good times, man. It's good times, and we forget about the sacrifices that were made and the personalities that gave so much to make our sport so awesome. So it is good to remember, and we need to think about the future. And people say, well, there's no future in the past. You're right, there is no future in the past, but there are a lot of important lessons, and history tends to repeat itself. So let's
I was just about to say, I completely disagree with that statement. I think there's plenty of future in the past, because when we forget our past, we're more likely to repeat past actions. That's why they say know your history, because the term history does indeed repeat itself. So knowing your history, you're prepared. So
well, I'd like to memorialize so many people, and we got a pretty good list. We're going to run out of time. I'm not even going to get to a third of the people that I think were so impactful to the sport.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go through some of them, and as we start to run out of time, I'll just list off the rest of them, so at least their names get out there, and just know that they were important.
Well, maybe we'll pick up on another episode, but I don't want to leave anybody out. So, well,
the next person on your list is Tom Mann.
Tom was he was the life of the party. Tom was just such a colorful, good-looking, big old game warden where he came from. Big old Alabama boy that was smart as a whip, but he had a facade around him that you would think that he wasn't nearly as sharp as he really was. Tom understood the industry, he understood marketing, he understood the importance of building the tournaments and participating, and but where Tom was really, really special is he knew how to be a friend. Tom was a friend. I was just a kid, and I was so intimidated by him. He had this reputation, and he was just so powerful, and he was in all the magazines, and he caught these big giant stringers of bass down on Eufaula in Alabama, and to me, he was bigger than life. And so I was intimidated by him. And I remember the first meeting I had with Tom. I walked up, and I wanted him to be my sponsor. And of course, I would imagine Tom got hit on about 200 times a day, people wanting him to sponsor them. And so I went up, and I figured he'd kind of blow me off, and I said, Mr. Mann, I'm Hank Parker. He said, well, I'm Tom Mann. I'm not Mr. Mann. He said, anytime somebody calls me Mr., that costs me money. So I want you to know I'm Tom Mann. I said, well, Mr. Mann, Mr. Tom Mann. He said, what's your name, son? I said, my name's Hank Parker. And he said, well, tell me about Hank Parker. Well, that blew me away. I couldn't believe he cared, He said, well, tell me about Hank Parker. So I started telling him about my dreams and what I had and what I wanted to do. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I'll watch you. You tell me you want to do all these things, I'm going to watch and see if you do. And if you do, then I'm going to really take a good look at you. And if I think you're going to deliver what you're telling me your dream is, I'm going to be there to help you. And what an encouragement that was, man. I left there. I didn't get a sponsorship, but I left there knowing that I had a door. If I lived up to what my dream was and I had the opportunity, I knew that I had a door to walk through to get a sponsorship in the future. I just had to deliver what I promised and fish the tournaments and keep my nose clean and do well. And it's ironic, the last tournament Tom Mann won was on Lake Seminole, and I led that tournament for 2 days, and I had a pretty good lead going in the last day. And Tom had just come out with a Scuppy Dine jelly worm, and he went up in the fish pond drain on Lake Seminole and caught the biggest bag of bass. He smoked them on that new jelly worm, and he ended up beating me. I came in, I thought I had the tournament won, and I had a pretty good lead going in that last day, and I caught a pretty good bag of fish, but Tom came in with a kill. I think it was like 38 pounds. I can't remember, but it was a National Bass Association tournament on Lake Seminole. Tom won it, and I finished second. And it was the only tournament that I finished second in that I was okay with. That was so cool that Tom won that tournament. And he didn't sneak in or come through the back door. He knocked the door down. He had a bag of fish, so he deserved to win, and I was really proud for him. So that was the last tournament Tom won. But Tom's legacy lives on. He started Humminbird, and he's the founder of Mann's Bait Company, and Tom did so much for the sport. And he and his brother Don did so much with built Southern Plastics that made all sorts of baits for lots of different companies. So Tom had his foot in a lot of places and did a lot to build the sport. And he and Ray and Forrest all collaborated. They all talked a lot about how to build the sport and how to participate. So Tom was another, and he was my very first guest when I started my television show. Of course, I did the pilot show with my kids down on Lake Santee Cooper. Mm-hmm. And the second show, I went to Eufaula to fish with Tom.
Tom Mann. And that is on your YouTube channel as well. We were doing a throwback every Sunday. We're doing like a throwback episode, and we're starting out with the first season in 1985. So that one is up on there. So if y'all want to go watch that, y'all can.
It was so funny, and if you do watch that, you'll see, and you don't really understand it, so I'll explain it to you a little bit. I went down there to fish on Lake Eufaula, and I thought Tom would be all ready and have his boat all polished up and be ready sitting on the ramp waiting on me to get there. So when I got there, Suzanne Newsom was his secretary, and Suzanne was a sweetheart. And I said, Suzanne, I went to Mann's Bait Company. I said, Suzanne's Tom here? She said, no, he's up on the farm. I thought, well, we're supposed to fish today. And she said, well, let me call him. And, of course, there were no cell phones, so he called Miss Mann at home, and she said, oh, he's out there with the cow.
This is just a hobby here. We'll go fishing. That's what you want to do.
Well, that's what I'd rather do. I enjoy this. You got some really nice-looking cattle, but I think I'd have a little bit more fun out there on the lake.
Well, you have to get used to these cows. Once you do it, but you'll enjoy this. But we'll go do a little fishing if you want to do it.
Well, you know, on the farm here, it's a beautiful farm you got. I look around, I see all these different lakes. I wonder if you're raising bass or racing cows.
We got both.
Well, that's good. Let's go catch some of those bass.
So I go out. Tom is just, I'm all intense. I'm laid back. I'm not laid back like he is. I'm ready to go. I'm thinking we're going to Eufaula. He's up there feeding cows, and he showed me his cows and took a tour of the barn, and we just had so finally I broke out a microphone, did an interview, and I said, let's go to Eufaula. And he said, well, we're about out of time. I said, let's just put it down here in the lake. I got a lake here. It's got some fish in it. We'll just fish right here.
Oh, yeah, I know. I watched that whole video. It was hilarious. He came riding down on some kind of like trike thing that he had.
A three-wheeler. A three-wheeler. That was back in the days before the four-wheeler. That was a three-wheeler.
What you got there?
Can I go?
Yeah, let's go. I'll tell you what, we're going to go to Eufaula, but I don't think with our time, you say there's a bass in here, let's just see if we can catch a fish here in your pond.
Like shoot turkeys on a rig.
Shoot, I've heard that before.
I got the equipment. You got anything in there?
I got a rod or two you can borrow. I don't know if you can cast it or not, but we'll try
it. It ain't one of them button tap things. It's open face.
I know your cameraman at the time, you got like a real close shot in your face. You're like this. You're like, I cannot believe.
This is what we're going to do. I was so looking so forward to getting on Lake Eufaula with Tom, who was a master of Eufaula, and we ended up fishing in a private lake.
A cow farm,
yeah.
Cow farm
yeah.
lake.
Oh, man, the things you run into. But that was Tom. That was Tom, and it was wonderful because I was with Tom Mann, and we caught a lot of fish and had a lot of fun. And his memory is something we need to hold on to. There's a memorial statue of Tom in Eufaula, Alabama, deservingly so, but we need to hold on to those memories. A special person that made a lot of contributions to the sport of fishing.
That's awesome and some good times. Yeah. Moving on to our next person, you put Billy Westmorland.
Billy Westmorland. He was a Tennessee boy that was noted for his knowledge and expertise on smallmouth. He lived on Lake Dale Hollow, where the world record of smallmouth came from. And he was just another one of those guys that was bigger than life. And I drew Billy in a tournament early on in my career, and I had drawn a few guys that had reputations as Billy, pioneers of the sport, the superstars. And when I drew Billy, man, he was so kind. And he didn't dominate as the other guys had done. He didn't say, shut up, get in the back and fish. I'm going to run this boat. I'm going to do it. He started talking to me and said, what do you think? This is what I've done. Tell me what you've done. Why do you think that was like that? What was the conditions? Was it cloudy? I mean, he just asked all the questions that was pertinent to the situation and treated me as if I were on his level.
Wow.
And here he's so accomplished and one of the best fishermen in the world, had this incredible reputation, but he treated me as I was just a kid, man, and he treated me as if I were just as important as he was, and that was unusual. And so we struck up a friendship that went a long way. He came to my house and stayed with me on several occasions. We fished on Lake Wiley. I used to live on Lake Wiley. He would come down, and we just made an incredible friendship. And Ray and Billy did not get along. Ray Scott and Billy. Billy always wore his shirt tail out, and back in the old days, Ray didn't like that. He thought that was disrespectful, and Billy didn't want to tuck his shirt tail in, so they butted heads. But yet, even though they had difference of opinions, Billy really respected what Ray was doing. Yeah. And on the other hand, Ray respected Billy.
Right.
Even though their personalities, man, they clashed. But they worked together, and Billy never tore down the sport. He always built it up, and he was always trying to help kids. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really a kid, but I was just a very young guy, maybe 20 years old. And Billy just took me under his wing, and he told me a lot of things that I didn't know about different personalities, how to deal with this, how to prosper in the world of bass fishing, and it was just a delight to know Billy Westmorland, and boy, what he taught me about smallmouth and the structure and what to look for. It was incredible. So he was a giver and shared, and he was bigger than life. And a lot of people don't remember Billy Westmorland, but it's so worthwhile of searching out and getting information. He was a unique individual, and he contributed a lot to the sport, and he was very impactful in my life.
Right. Well, moving on to the next one, Jerry Ryan.
Jerry Ryan. You're reading my writing. Jerry Ryan.
Hey, that's on you, not me.
That's on me.
It's coming from the man who thought chimney was chimney.
That's right. That's exactly right. Jerry Ryan was my traveling partner. Jerry Ryan was a member of the Gaston Bassmasters right out of Gastonia, North Carolina, Lake Wiley. And the Gaston Bassmasters, I wanted to be a member. And when I was 17 years old, I guess I was the youngest member. And Jerry Ryan was the president. And he said, well, you're going to have to fish with a couple of guys, and they're going to have to approve that you're worthy to be a part of our fold. And I remember I fished with Boyce Weir, who was a member, and then all the guys had to vote. Sonny Beam, who was a great friend of mine, was a part of that. And Jerry gave me a fair trial and allowed me to become a member. And then I fished with Jerry on many, many occasions, learned so much. He was so versatile, good, great spinnerbait fisherman. But Jerry and I traveled together, and he was sponsored by Shoney's. Well, Shoney's owned a restaurant chain called the Hungry Fisherman. And so they sponsored Jerry. And then Jerry developed a tournament series called the Hungry Fisherman Tournament Series. Man, that thing grew. It was gigantic. And then when Shoney's spun that off, the new owners didn't want to continue. So Jerry turned it into the Jerry Ryan Bass Tournaments. And man, they were all over the Southeast and very, very, very successful. So most people that know Jerry Ryan and remember Jerry Ryan, they remember him as a tournament director. But I remember Jerry as a great fisherman. I remember Washita, Arkansas. He and I practiced together, and we found 2 areas that were holding fish. And I said, you choose the one you want, and I'll take the other one. And so he did, and he ended up winning the tournament. He caught like 30, and this is Washita, was tough back in those days. He ended up winning the tournament the first day.
Wow.
He caught enough fish that he didn't have to have another fish. He caught like 36 pounds the first day, and he won the tournament. I ended up finishing third. I was second for the first 2 days, but then Jimmy Houston came in the last day and beat me out by 3 ounces. So Jerry won. That was a BASS tournament on Lake Washita. And so Jerry was a bass champion, a tournament director, a bass club president, a great dad. His sons, Mark and Greg, became great friends of mine, and just a lot of history with Jerry Ryan. But he did he did a lot of the grassroots building of tournaments in the Southeast.
Wow.
And was very impactful.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
was
cool.
a very credible guy. Boy, he was just like Ray. He wanted honesty and integrity in his tournaments, and he worked really hard to make that happen. So Jerry, a very successful tournament fisherman, also a very successful tournament director.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, this next one is very legible, at least. Ricky Green.
Ricky Green. You know, I drew Tommy Martin. Tommy had won the 74 Bassmaster Classic, and Tommy and Ricky collaborated. I didn't even know people did that. I learned a lot by that. They collaborated. Even though I traveled with Jerry Ryan, we didn't collaborate a whole lot. He had his ways and his ideas and his areas that he had fished in practice, and we didn't share a lot of information. Well, Ricky and Tommy did, and I remember I fished with Tommy that day, and he and Ricky ran into each other, and we were going down one bank, and Ricky was coming in the other direction. Boy, and they talked 90 miles an hour and cast 90 miles an hour. Ricky Green was the first true power fisherman. He and Tommy Martin. And Ricky taught me so much about don't waste time. You do not have time to waste. You got to fish like your hair's on fire. And Kevin Van Dam would be proud of Ricky Green. He was the first guy that fished like Van Dam does today, like you're on fire, man. He didn't waste a second, and he was so dominant on taking care and maximizing every cast of every minute of every day. So I learned so much from Ricky Green, and his wife Betty, she fished bass and gal like Jimmy Houston's wife that was so incredibly successful, bass and gals. But Ricky was a fishing family, and he was very impactful in the sport. And Betty was very successful as a lady bass fisherman. So they were a great fishing family and had a big impact on my life.
That's pretty awesome. All right, moving on to the next one is Lonnie Stanley.
Lonnie Stanley. Lonnie and I became great friends. And I never endorsed Stanley Jigs. He was the founder of Stanley Jig Bait Company, a very successful bait company. And I never was sponsored by him. I was competitive. I was with Mann's and with Berkeley, and Lonnie was Stanley Jigs, and he never, ever, that didn't influence him at all. He treated me like I was his best friend, and we hunted together, and we traveled together a lot. And the neat part about bass fishing, different from any other sport that I know of, there was so much camaraderie. We didn't hold a grudge against the guy that won the tournament if we didn't win, as maybe you would in football or even racing. You competed against the lake. And I didn't have to worry about beating Lonnie or Lonnie beating me or me beating Roland or whomever. You fished against the lake. So we were able to maintain lots of friendships, and it was kind of like going to a family reunion when we came to a bass tournament. We all got to see each other and visit, and Lonnie was at the top of my list. I couldn't wait to get with Lonnie. And Lonnie had all these wild stories, man. He could tell a story, and he was just so alive, man. Lonnie loved life, and he was always smiling, and man, what a great fisherman he was. And he came up with all these ideas for different color jigs, and man, he was a specialist on tweaking baits and making them a little bit special. And that's kind of how Stanley Jig became so popular. They had different colors and different sizes and all kinds of things that he had just tweaked out. And Lonnie never quit thinking about how to make a bait better, whether it was a spinner bait or a jig or a buzz bait or whatever it was, a frog. He had all kinds of different baits that he came up with that he made them unique. And Lonnie was always smiling and always happy, and he was a contagious kind of a guy. And we went hunting, and I'll tell a quick story. And it's kind of a crazy story, but we went to Mexico. And we were hunting in Mexico, and Lonnie knew the guys that were leasing the land next door. And they were from Houston, and Lonnie was right there not too far out of Houston where he was from. And so he knew those guys, and they made a deal. If you see a deer on our side of the fence, and we were hunting on brothers' land, Augustine and Loopy. And we were hunting on Loopy, and those boys were hunting on Augustine. Little did we know that those two brothers, Augustine and Loopy, did not get along at all. So we made a deal within ourselves with the group that were leasing Augustine's land that if we saw a deer on their side of the fence, we'd shoot it. If they saw a deer on our side of the fence, they could shoot it. Well, we shot one on their side of the fence. Little did we know Augustine went ballistic. So he rode into our camp in the middle of the night with guns blazing, shooting guns up in the air, and we were sleeping in tents. And they called us out, and they had torches. I mean, it was like the Old West. And they basically said if we step foot on Augustine's land, he's going to shoot us. Wow. And so it was very intimidating, very, very intimidating. Well, Lonnie's business partner were Mike, I can't remember his name. But anyway, Mike and Lonnie, they were, one of the places we had to hunt was called the Red Hill. And that was Loopy's land. But we had to cross and go through a gate that belonged to Augustine to get to Loopy's Red Hill. Mm-hmm. So Mike Dice and Lonnie, they decided that they were going to go, regardless of what Augustine had said about setting foot on his land, they were going to go to the Red Hill. Yeah. So we got up that next morning, and they chickened out. We sat by the campfire, and I said, well, you guys are going over to the Red Hill, aren't you? And Lonnie said, I don't think we'll wait and go to afternoon. I could tell he was very intimidated going over there at night.
Well, if somebody came up in my camp, guns a-blazing, acting like they're some cartel member, I would be a little nervous to go on their land, too.
It was threatening, no doubt about it. So that afternoon, we didn't see any deer that morning, and the Red Hill was the best place we had to hunt. So Lonnie and Mike got together and said, we're going to the Red Hill. So they went to the Red Hill. So Augustine's gate there's a big Wasatch tree that was at the post of that gate. So I came in and they weren't back yet, so I went up and I stood by that gate and I hid in that Wasatch tree. And so Mike and Lonnie rode up they had Yamaha four-wheelers. And Yamaha was Lonnie's sponsor, so man, they loved those Yamaha four-wheelers. So they rode up on those four-wheelers, and you could sit there and watch them. They were looking at one another. Lonnie was looking at Mike. Mike was looking at Lonnie. Who's going to get off and open the gate? They're both scared to death.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors. Who's going to do it?
They sat there and stared at each other for about 3 minutes, and finally, Lonnie got off and he came up to open the gate. Well, he had to reach through the gate to get the chain, to take the hook off the chain. And I'm standing in that Wasatch bush, and when he put his hand out there, I just grabbed it. And I wouldn't let go. I grabbed his arm, and he's screaming, "It's got me, it's got me, it's got me." And Mike's sitting on the Yamaha, and he's screaming, "What's got you, Lonnie? I don't know, he's got me, he's got me." And that was the funniest thing. It scared him to death, And of course, I wouldn't let go for nothing because I knew they'd shoot me, So I was holding on, and it was a lot of fun. We had things like that happen all the time, and we hunted together. We went to Mexico and hunted by the campfire. Ray Scott, Lonnie Stanley, and Mike Dice and I all went to Mexico and hunted. So we had good times. We hunted at the Pilancia in Texas together. So Lonnie Stanley was just one of those guys that had a contagious personality of smiling and being happy.
Man, those are my favorite kinds of people to be around in general. Man, that's awesome. Some great times. Next person on your list is Charlie Reed.
Charlie Reed. I'll make this quick because we're running out of time, and I love Charlie Reed. Charlie Reed was from Oklahoma. He won the Bassmaster Classic up on Lake Chickamauga in Chattanooga. But Charlie was another one of those guys. His wife, Voga, she also fished bass and gal, and she was an awesome fisherman. So they were a fishing family. And it was just a great friend. And Charlie was one of those guys that had your back. And Charlie was one of those guys that every time I'd see him, he said, "Hey, big man, I've been praying for you." Great Christian guy with a great attitude. And Charlie's passed on. But I never want to forget Charlie Reed. Awesome guy.
Man, that's awesome. All right, next person on your list is Mickey Bruce.
Mickey Bruce, one of the Buford, Georgia gang, the Sugar Hill gang. He and Cliff Craft, awesome guys. But Mickey and Cliff, they travel together. And Tom Mann Jr., no relationship to Tom Mann. Tom Mann Jr. from Buford, Georgia, the Sugar Hill gang. Buford and Sugar Hill right there together. But Mickey passed away recently, and we sure miss him. And those guys were so impactful on my life and on the sport itself. They were the first ones I ever saw have a Zoom bait. I think when Zoom was still a garage bait, Mickey and Tom and the Sugar Hill gang had those Zoom baits, and they were so hot on Lake Lanier. First time I ever saw them. But Mickey was just a great guy, and we miss him a lot.
And that's awesome. All right, tell me about Guido Hibdon.
Guido, Gravois Mill, Missouri. Guido, every time we go to the Lake of the Ozarks, it'd be a who's going to finish second tournament, because Guido's going to dominate and win that tournament. And I don't know how many he won, but he won just about all of them I ever fished there. But Guido was one of those guys that would give you credit. Most of the top guys, they didn't want to talk about, boy, I tell you, Hank Parker's a great fisherman. Guido was real quick to do that. Somebody said, "Tell me about Hank Parker." Let me tell you something about Hank Parker. He's an awesome fisherman. And so Guido became really a great friend of mine. And if you think about this, Guido and Dion, both father and son, won the Bassmaster Classic.
Wow.
That's a
cool.
Huge deal.
Yeah.
That is a huge deal. And there are a lot of lures named after Guido. The Guido bug, I've caught a lot of fish on them. He was just such an impactful guy and great fishing family. I mean, Dion's son, they're all just incredible fishermen. So I hope no one will ever forget Guido. And when I went to see him before he passed away, he was in a rehabilitation center trying to overcome cancer, and it got him, man. I hate cancer. It doesn't respect anybody, but it had Guido and Stella, Guido's wife, who passed away just recently. Stella was there, and she said, Guido, Hank Parker's here to see you. And so when I walked in, he didn't know who I was. Aww. And he said, let me tell you about Hank Parker. I told him, he drew Dion. I said, Dion's going to wear you out, boy. He tore old Hank. Old Hank didn't know which end. And Stella said, Guido, you're talking to Hank. And it never registered. He went on to, and Dion tore him. Old Hank was to Wallopy. He didn't know which end of the fishing rod to hold. Man, Dion, I told him it's going to happen. I told him. And he went on, and we had so much fun in it. I left there encouraged that maybe he would make a comeback. Stella had told me, he said, man, he's responding to some of these treatments, and the doctors say we have hope, but it wasn't very long after that the cancer.
That's so sad. That is so sad.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it.
Good man. Last person on your list, last but not least, Jim Bitter.
Yeah, I wanted to, Jim just passed away here recently in November of this past year, and Jim and I, he dropped a fish back overboard that he would have won the 1989 Classic that I won. And he really had a hard time with that. I mean, to win the Bassmaster Classic will change your life. And to lose it will change your life as well. Two different directions. So Jim really, really, really struggled with that. And as time went on, there was some animosity towards me, and then I drew Jim in a tournament, and it was as if he were angry with me, and it was a tough day in the boat and tough times for a while, but it's so cool as time went on. Some friends of mine were in his bait shop in right out of Sanford, Florida. And Jim sent word that he would love to have some of my spinnerbaits in his store, and that he sure wanted me to know that he had no hard feelings against me at all, and that things were good between he and I. And that was before he died. And I am so grateful for that, and I'm so thankful for that. And I wanted to give a shout out to the memory of Jim Bitter, who was super successful. He won a Mega Bass tournament, should have won the Bassmaster Classic, didn't work out for him. But what a great guy he was. Right. And what this whole list of characters were so positive to the sport of fishing. And we need to bear that in mind as we go forward, that your opinion does matter, and your statements that you post on social media, they do matter. Right. And we need to let the guys that we've just talked about be impactful and influential and make us think about what we say and do for the future of the sport.
I completely agree with that. And how blessed are you to be able to know all of these legends and these icons and these great men. And I will say they don't make men like that too much anymore. I'd say they're a rare find nowadays.
Well, I lived in a good time. My history is rich because of people. And I look back, all these trophies are made to collect dust. That's what they do. But those memories are very much alive. And we're talking about memories. The part 3 of the Dale Earnhardt documentary is on today.
Amazon Prime.
Yep, comes on Amazon Prime Day. And I think 3 and 4 may come out both today.
I don't. I don't know.
I know three is for sure.
Be on the lookout for it. With all that being said, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out all of our links in the description below, and we are praying for the Robertson family.
Yes, for
majorly.
sure. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, and God bless you. See you next time.
See you next time.